From the old movies of 30 years ago and beyond,
to the world of the new films of the last 30 years.
To the movies that are now playing, this is Old, New, and Now Playing. And now, here's your host, Will Robinson Smith.
Hello and welcome to Old, New, and Now Playing, your time machine through the world of movies. I'm your host, Will Robinson Smith. Thank you so much for joining me today. And Steven Spielberg is back at it once again with another one of his big blockbuster action-adventure movies, this time in the most 80s-tastic way with Ready Player One. And you know, Steven Spielberg, obviously a great writer, obviously a great director, but also a very prolific producer, having over 160 IMDb credits to his name. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to take a deep dive into one of those, so to speak. So let's just dive right in. This is your feature presentation. Innerspace is an original sci-fi movie from director Joe Dante, which stars Martin Short, Dennis Quaid, and Meg Ryan. The film came out in 1987 and was the third collaboration between Dante and Spielberg. Innerspace focuses on Tuck Pendleton, a retired Air Force lieutenant who only has his memories, his alcohol, and his girlfriend going for him, and one of those doesn't stick around for too long. Meanwhile, he volunteers for an experiment to be shrunken down and injected into a rabbit for a pretty run-down lab. Things go wrong when, in an attempt to save the technology from falling into dastardly hands, Tuck is injected into the hypochondriac Jack Putter. What happens next is a cat and mouse game as they race to get Tuck back to normal and thwart the thieves. And while, as I mentioned, this is not a Spielberg-directed film, you can definitely still feel his presence here, and that's due to two people that were definitely in Steven Spielberg's orbit at the time. As I mentioned, director Joe Dante and Steven Spielberg had been around the block a couple of times together. Dante directed 1984's Gremlins, and the pair each directed a quarter of Twilight Zone, the movie. Like many successful comedies, Dante gave Martin Short and Dennis Quaid enough room to play and get some good improv moments in the film. He also had a good sense of the pacing of the film and was able to keep things flowing and on track. Thanks also to writer Jeffrey Boehm, who would go on to write Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, this movie is able to have several storylines running alongside one another, and they pretty much all work. Part of the reason the improv was able to work so well and the script itself was because Jeffrey Boehm, the writer, was actually able to be on set for the entirety of the shoot. Oftentimes, productions aren't given the budget just to have their writer on set, so to work around that, Dante gave Boehm a bit role to justify having him there to make script edits as need be. And speaking of actors, this movie definitely doesn't work unless you have really good chemistry between the leads, Dennis Quaid and Martin Short. At this point, Quaid had starred or appeared in more than 15 movies, including some sci-fi films and comedies. As far as big screen appearances, he definitely had more projects under his belt than Short. In the movie, once he was shrunken down and was injected into Short, he really locks into the character and does a great job playing the straight man in the film. Meanwhile, Martin Short came up mostly in the television world, in large part as a regular on Second City Television Network. He was coming off of Three Amigos the year prior, which was met with some mixed critical response despite its powerhouse trio of leads. I loved basically everything Short was doing in this movie, from his smaller moments to the more outlandish physical comedy. The interplay, pun intended, between these two guys is a lot of fun to watch, and they pull off the odd couple quasi-buddy cop tropes very nicely. The movie was also a breakout performance for Meg Ryan. She had a smaller role in Top Gun the year before and also starred in the critical bomb that was Armed and Dangerous alongside John Candy and Eugene Levy. Here, she plays the estranged girlfriend of Dennis Quaid's character. She does a fair job here and has some fun moments with Martin Short. So I do have a couple of other thoughts about Meg Ryan's character, and they really do fall into the major spoilers category.
Major spoilers!
So if you haven't seen the movie, just go ahead and skip to the time code down here, or if you have seen the movie or just you don't care about spoilers at all, just let's give the people a few seconds, make up their mind if they want to go ahead and skip to the time code. We'll wait.
3, 2, who won?
Okay, so to me, it felt like a really big stretch for her to go from where she starts off in this movie to going to love Dennis Quaid's character by the end. That seems like a really big jump. Clearly, Tuck has been a pretty bad person in her life, and except for the fact that he comes close to dying by the end of the movie, it seems like a bit of a stretch to justify her deciding to marry him. One of the only things I can think of is that she was carrying his baby, which we see at one point, and she wanted him to be a father and be back in her life. But that bugged me too. So, okay, follow me here. Pendleton gets transferred into Lydia through a kiss, and then all of a sudden he's just in her uterus? Now, I'm not a doctor by any means, but if he didn't know he was in another body, how did he just magically end up in the uterus? It makes no sense. However, one thing we can't end our discussion without talking about is the special effects in this movie. The film came away with the Oscar for Best Visual Effects, beating out Predator in the 60th Academy Awards. They do some really cool and inventive things here, like using Jell-O as a substitute for fat cells and other parts of the body. All in all, you definitely have to suspend your disbelief in certain parts of this movie, but if you can get past those parts that don't make a whole lot of sense, there's a lot to appreciate here. The comedy between the leads is fun, the movement through the body creates some great effect moments, and it's a fun story to spend an evening with.
Somebody help me! I'm possessed!
I give Innerspace a 7 out of 10. So those are my thoughts on Innerspace. When you've had a chance to see the movie, I want to know what you thought about it and what's one of your favorite Steven Spielberg produced films? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and with that, we are done with this episode of Old, New, and Now Playing. If you enjoyed the review, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up. That would be super helpful, and if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Click that old subscribe button down below. That way, you can keep up with all the goodness coming out, the movie reviews, trailer reactions, all of the things that are coming up on this channel in the very near future. And for a further discussion on movies, if you want to reach out to me, have a longer dialogue, go ahead and hop over to our Facebook page, Old, New, and Now Playing on Facebook, and we can talk all about everything related to movies. So thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time.